It all began in a quiet neighborhood at the edge of town, a place where everyone knew everyone and every rumor echoed longer than the evening prayers. The land behind the old banyan tree had been empty for years. People said it was cursed, others said it was disputed. But one morning, construction trucks arrived without warning. At first, nobody cared much. New buildings rose all the time, but when the foundation for a massive mansion began taking shape, whispers spread faster than the sound of the drilling machines. "Who's building that?" people asked. The name soon came out: Rafik, the landlady's only son. His mother, Amarin Begum, was a respected woman in the neighborhood, strict, disciplined, and proud. She had rented out rooms to families for decades, surviving on that income after her husband's death. Everyone respected her honesty. So when people saw her son's new construction, they assumed it was her investment, maybe a dream home for their family. But something didn't add up. Amarin looked confused when neighbors congratulated her. She'd blink and force a smile. Later, behind closed doors, she confronted her son. "Rafik, what's going on with that land near the banyan tree? People say it's ours." He gave her a calm smile. "Ma, don't worry, everything's legal, I've handled it, you'll see, this house will change our lives." But her instincts told her something wasn't right. Because she knew that land wasn't theirs. 2 weeks later, the workers laid the final layer of bricks for the ground floor. The structure was rising fast, too fast. People wondered where the money came from. Rafik wasn't rich, he wasn't even employed. Some said he'd borrowed from shady lenders. Others whispered that he'd sold part of his mother's property without telling her. But Rafik walked through the site like a king, wearing sunglasses, giving orders, acting like a man who owned the world. He promised the workers bonuses, treated them to tea, and bragged that the mansion would be the biggest in town. Still, there was something unsettling about the way he looked over his shoulder whenever anyone asked about ownership documents. Then one evening, Amarin Begum went to the local land office. She wanted to see the papers herself. When the officer brought them out, her hands trembled. The documents said the land behind the banyan tree belonged to her, signed, sealed, and approved. But she had never signed anything. Her eyes widened. "This can't be true," she whispered. The officer frowned. "Your son submitted the transfer request, madam. Your signature is on it." Her heart pounded. Rafik had forged her signature. The realization hit her like a wave of betrayal. Her own son had used her name to steal another man's land, a small plot that once belonged to an old farmer who had disappeared years ago. That land wasn't theirs at all. She returned home in silence, her sari dusted with construction dirt, her hands shaking. That night, she confronted Rafik again. "Why would you do this?" she cried. "You forged my name, you used me to steal land." Rafik didn't deny it, he only looked away. "Ma, you don't understand, that land was empty for decades. No one cared, I'm just making it useful." "Useful?" she shouted. "You call stealing useful?" But Rafik was calm, almost cold. "When this house is done, we'll never have to worry again, let the world talk." He turned away and left, the echo of his footsteps disappearing down the hallway. That night, Amarin couldn't sleep. Outside, the cement mixer roared. Inside, her heart broke. By dawn, she made a decision. She would go to the police. But when she stepped outside, she froze. The mansion in progress was surrounded by men, tall, stern-looking men she had never seen before. One of them glared at her, then at her small old house beside the construction site. Rafik was standing among them, laughing, smoking a cigarette, acting as if he was one of them. Amarin's blood ran cold. Because she recognized one of the men. He was Farid Chowdhury, a local businessman with a history of land grabbing. He had once tried to buy the same plot years ago and had failed. Now he was back and working with her son. By evening, the walls of the mansion reached the second floor. The neighbors stopped asking questions. Everyone could sense that something dark was unfolding, something too risky to speak about. But one man didn't stay silent: Nasir Uddin, the rightful heir to the land. He had returned to the town after years of working abroad. When he saw the construction on his family's land, he nearly collapsed. His father's name was still on the original deeds, the ones now mysteriously replaced in the land office. He stormed to Rafik's site, shouting, "Who gave you the right to build here? This is my land." Rafik smirked. "Show me proof, I have papers all legal." Nasir pulled out the old photocopies of his family deed. Rafik's men laughed. Old paper, old story, one of them said. But Nasir wasn't the type to back down. He went straight to the police, only to find that Rafik had already filed a complaint against him, claiming harassment and trespassing. That night, 2 constables came to Nasir's small rented room and warned him to stay away from Rafik's property. He realized then the system was already in Rafik's pocket. Days passed, the mansion grew taller, but so did the tension. Amarin watched her neighbor's pitying looks, her reputation crumbling like dust under heavy boots. She stopped leaving the house. At night, she'd stare through her window at the massive structure rising from stolen soil, her son's dream, her shame. And then one morning, she found a sealed envelope pushed under her door. Inside was a single photograph, a picture of Rafik shaking hands with a man in uniform, a police officer. On the back of the photo, a note was scribbled in rough handwriting. "Your son's deal isn't what you think. Ask about the land behind the wall." Her fingers went numb. She looked out at the construction site again. There was a wall, a freshly built, tall boundary wall separating the mansion's backyard from an unused piece of ground. Something inside her told her that the truth was buried there literally. That night she waited until everyone was asleep. The wind howled, the site was dark, and only a single streetlight flickered nearby. She stepped out trembling, carrying a small flashlight. When she reached the wall, she noticed fresh cement stains and faint drag marks leading from the trees to the wall's edge. She knelt down, touched the soil. It was soft, recently dug. Her breath quickened. And then she saw something half buried beneath the dirt. A torn piece of cloth, red. She recognized it instantly. It belonged to Nasir Uddin. Her scream echoed through the night, swallowed by the unfinished mansion towering above her. Amarin Begum's scream cut through the silent night like shattered glass. The workers' quarters stirred awake, lights flickered on, and within moments Rafik appeared at the window of the half-finished mansion, his expression tense. "Ma, what are you doing outside?" he shouted, his voice sharp, commanding. But Amarin didn't answer. She was frozen, her trembling hands gripping that torn piece of red cloth, the same one she'd seen Nasir wearing days ago. It was half covered in dirt, stained darker than mud. She looked up, her face pale in the dim glow of the flashlight. "What did you do, Rafik?" she whispered. Rafik hurried down from the site, his boots crunching against the gravel. The moment he saw the cloth, his eyes changed, panic flashed, then quickly vanished behind a cold smirk. "You shouldn't be here, Ma," he said, grabbing her arm tightly. "Let's go inside." She struggled. "Answer me, where is Nasir? What have you done to him?" His grip tightened. "You're imagining things, go inside before someone sees you." But she could feel his hand trembling. That told her everything. She yanked her arm away. "You think I'm blind? I know you've gone too far this time." He leaned close, his voice low and venomous. "You don't know anything, Ma. You've lived your whole life following rules, and what did it give you? A leaking roof and debts. I'm doing what you never could, building power." "Power," she spat, "by burying people alive." Rafik's face darkened. He said nothing more, just turned and walked back toward the site. That night, Amarin sat awake, clutching the red cloth, tears rolling down her cheeks. The sound of hammers echoed faintly in the distance. They were still working, even at midnight. But now she realized it wasn't just construction noise, it was secrecy being buried deeper. The next morning, she made her way to the mosque's courtyard. The old imam, a kind man named Rahmet Ali, noticed her distress. "What's wrong, Begum?" he asked gently. She hesitated but then broke down. She told him everything, the fake papers, the wall, the cloth, and her son's silence. Rahmet Ali's face hardened. "That land was always under dispute. If your son has forged documents, it's a crime. But if someone's missing," he paused, looking toward the construction site in the distance, "then it's something far worse." He advised her to speak to a journalist he knew, a young man named Imran Haq who had exposed local corruption cases before. "He can't be bribed or threatened easily," the imam said. "If you truly want the truth to come out, tell him." By afternoon, Amarin met Imran at a small tea stall behind the market. She showed him the cloth and told him everything. Imran listened carefully, jotting notes in his small black notebook. His eyes gleamed with curiosity. "If your story's true, Mrs. Begum, this could expose a whole network, but we'll need proof, real proof, something linking Rafik and that land deal to corruption." He promised to investigate quietly. That same evening, Imran slipped into the land office. His friend inside handed him a copy of the forged papers. "These documents are clean, too clean," the clerk whispered. "Even the signatures are perfect, almost like someone from inside the office helped him." Imran took photos of the files and noticed something odd, a familiar name stamped at the bottom of one page, Sub-Inspector Hassin. The same officer who had once worked under Farid Chowdhury. The puzzle pieces were fitting together. Rafik's mansion wasn't just his greed, it was part of a bigger deal. A deal involving corrupt officers, businessmen, and land documents switched in silence. Meanwhile, Amarin tried to act normal. She cooked, cleaned, and avoided her son's eyes. But inside, her heart was collapsing. She had raised him alone with hope and sacrifice, never knowing he'd turn into the kind of man who could destroy lives for a house made of lies. 3 days later, something unexpected happened. A rumor spread that Nasir Uddin had been seen alive near the bus stand. People claimed he was injured, limping, and hiding from police. Amarin felt a flicker of hope, maybe he was alive after all. But when she told Rafik, he didn't look surprised. He simply smiled and said, "Maybe ghosts walk among us now." That answer sent a chill through her bones. The next night, Imran returned with new evidence, a hidden camera recording from one of Rafik's workers. The footage showed Rafik and Farid arguing near the wall, their voices low but tense. Rafik said, "You promised me full ownership, not police attention." Farid replied coldly, "Then keep quiet, you signed the deal. If that old man's body turns up, it's your neck on the line, not mine." The audio crackled, but the words were clear enough. Imran played it for Amarin and her face drained of color. "My God," she whispered, covering her mouth, he really did it." Imran's voice was firm. "We have to go to the authorities before they destroy more evidence." But before they could, something happened that turned the entire town upside down. The next morning, as the sun rose over the half-built mansion, a group of policemen arrived, not to arrest Rafik, but to protect him. They ordered all workers to continue construction and blocked anyone from entering. When Imran tried to question them, one officer warned, "Walk away if you value your job." Within hours, Rafik's mansion became a fortress. Guards patrolled the site and strangers began showing up in expensive cars. The air smelled of money, dirty money. That evening, Amarin found her home door unlocked. Inside, her cupboard had been broken open. The red cloth, the photo, even the copies of land papers, all gone. She rushed to Rafik's mansion, shouting his name. He appeared on the balcony, smiling down at her. "Looking for something, Ma?" he asked softly. "Why are you doing this to me?" she cried. "I gave you everything, I raised you alone, how could you steal, lie, and hurt innocent people?" Rafik's face twisted. "You raised me poor, you made me live on charity, I swore I'd never be small again, you call it lying, I call it surviving." Tears streamed down her face. "You're destroying everything good left in this family." He leaned on the railing, staring at her coldly. "You think anyone cares about good anymore? This world belongs to the ones who take what they want." She looked at him for a long moment. "Then remember this, Rafik, everything built on stolen land will one day bury its builder." He laughed, a cruel, hollow sound that echoed through the courtyard. That night, lightning struck. A storm rolled in and thunder cracked over the town. The mansion's metal rods glistened under rain and wind tore through the unfinished rooms. Imran, unable to stay silent, published his story online with the video recording, naming Rafik, Farid, and the corrupt officers. Within hours, it went viral. By dawn, the police had surrounded the mansion again, but this time not for protection. A new investigation had been launched. Rafik woke up to sirens and flashing lights. Men in uniform were everywhere. He ran outside shouting, "Who called you here?" One officer stepped forward holding a warrant. "We have orders to seal this site. You're under investigation for land forgery and suspected homicide." Rafik froze. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. He looked up toward his mother's window, but she wasn't there. He ran to her house. The door was open, but the room was empty. On the table lay a single note written in her shaky handwriting. I couldn't stop you from sinning, Rafik, but I can stop myself from being your shield. As he read the note, a gunshot echoed from outside. Everyone turned toward the mansion, where the wall behind the banyan tree had collapsed from the storm. Beneath the fallen bricks lay a human skeleton wrapped in red cloth. And the truth that Rafik thought he had buried forever had finally come back to light. The storm had ended, but the town hadn't slept. By morning, hundreds gathered near the collapsed wall. The rain had softened the soil, revealing bones, torn fabric, and rusted tools. Police cordoned off the area, their voices sharp, echoing through the mist. And standing behind the yellow tape, Rafik's face was pale, drained of arrogance, drained of breath. He didn't speak, didn't blink, just stared at the red cloth wrapped around the bones, fluttering slightly in the morning wind. The same red cloth his mother had once shown him, the one he claimed not to recognize. Whispers spread like wildfire. It's Nasir Uddin, someone said. They buried him under the mansion. Another voice added, that's why they built that wall. The truth was finally out, and the whole neighborhood now knew. By noon, the police sealed the entire site. Officers from the city arrived, along with detectives and journalists. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and Rafik stood there silent, his expensive shirt clinging to his sweat-soaked skin. An officer read out his name. Rafik Ahmed, you are under arrest for land forgery, criminal conspiracy, and the suspected murder of Nasir Uddin. Rafik didn't resist, he only muttered, it wasn't supposed to happen this way. They handcuffed him as the crowd watched. The same people who once admired his ambition now watched him fall like a broken statue. But amid the chaos, one face was missing, Amran Begum. No one had seen her since the night before. Rumors swirled that she'd fled out of shame or maybe been taken by those she'd exposed, but the truth was simpler and far sadder. At that same moment, a local fisherman found a small figure sitting by the riverbank wrapped in a shawl. It was Amran. She had been there all night, staring at the dark water, her eyes hollow. When the fisherman called her name, she turned slowly and said in a quiet, broken voice, I warned him, the soil remembers what we do to it. He didn't understand what she meant, but she didn't need anyone to. Back in town, Rafik was taken into custody. The interrogation room smelled of damp walls and cold fear. Across from him sat Inspector Karim, a new officer assigned after Imran's report forced the district to act. Tell us what happened that night, Karim demanded. Rafik stayed silent. Karim slammed the table. You forged documents, used fake witnesses, bribed land officers, and worked with Farid Chowdhury, but now a man's body has been found. Talk or you'll carry this alone. Finally, Rafik lifted his head, eyes hollow. It wasn't supposed to go that far. Farid said he'd handle Nasir, just scare him off. But that night Nasir showed up at the site. He shouted, threatened to go to the press. Farid hit him too hard, I froze, I didn't mean for him to die. Karim narrowed his eyes, and then you buried him. Rafik nodded weakly. They told me if I didn't help, I'd be next. I built the wall over him. I thought it would stay hidden forever. There was silence, only the faint buzz of the ceiling fan filled the room. Karim wrote something down, and your mother, did she know? Rafik looked away. She found out. I thought I could protect her by keeping quiet, but I destroyed her instead. Across town, Imran published another article, The Mansion of Lies, How a Son's Greed Exposed a Town's Corruption. It spread fast, reaching national news. Farid Chowdhury tried to flee the city, but the police caught him at the border. Within days, the case turned into a scandal that shook the entire district. But while the headlines screamed justice, Amran remained silent. She didn't attend court, didn't visit her son in jail. She stayed in her small, half-broken house, the same one she had built years ago with her husband's savings, honest money, clean money. Neighbors brought her food, but she rarely ate. Sometimes she'd be seen sitting at the edge of the alley, staring at the half-finished mansion now locked behind police tape. It loomed over her like a ghost of everything she'd lost, her name, her peace, her son. One evening, Imran came to see her. He found her sitting by the window, the setting sun painting her face in a tired glow. Mrs. Begum, he said softly, justice is being served. They've arrested everyone involved. She looked at him, her voice thin and distant. Justice. Imran hesitated. She continued, when a mother raises a son, she dreams he'll build something beautiful, not destroy others to do it. Tell me, Imran, which court can punish that? He had no answer. The silence between them stretched, heavy and painful. Days later, the town began moving on. The mansion stood still, unfinished, abandoned, a monument of arrogance and deceit. The wind whistled through its hollow halls like whispers of the dead. And then one night a fire broke out. The guards on duty claimed they saw a shadow moving near the gates before the flames started. The fire spread fast, swallowing the half-built mansion in orange light. People rushed to help, but it was too late. By dawn, all that remained were blackened pillars and ash, as if the land itself had finally taken back what was stolen from it. When the fire department searched the debris, they found something strange, a small clay oil lamp at the center of the site, still warm, its wick burned to the end. The police assumed it was an accident, but those who knew Amarin whispered that she had gone there that night to end it all once and for all. They found her the next morning, sitting outside the charred ruins, her hands folded, her eyes calm for the first time in months. It's done, she said quietly when the officers approached. The land can rest now. In the distance, the ashes of the mansion rose into the morning air like the final breath of a curse lifted. But deep inside her, a mother's heart still broke, not for the house, not for the scandal, but for the boy who had lost himself chasing power. As she stood and turned away, a single tear rolled down her cheek, glistening in the dawn light. For 2 days, the mansion that once stood tall under the sun now stood like a ghost of greed, silent, cursed, and surrounded by the whispers of villagers who finally knew the truth. Amir's name spread across every tongue, not as a successful man but as a warning, the boy who built his palace on stolen soil. But deep inside that broken mansion, Amir sat in the corner of his grand hall, staring at the cracks on the marble floor, the same marble he had chosen to prove he was better than everyone. He hadn't eaten in days. The chandelier above him still glittered faintly in the light of the dying afternoon, mocking him like a crown above a fallen king. His mother, Mrs. Rahima, stood by the door, eyes red and weary. Amir, you have to go to them, you have to tell the truth yourself before they drag you like a criminal. Amir didn't respond. His hands trembled as he picked up the folder lying next to him, the same forged documents that had brought him everything. He looked at his own signature on the fake papers, remembering how confident he had been the day he signed them. The ink had long faded, but the consequences had not. Outside, police cars were already parked by the gate. The villagers watched in silence, their faces a mixture of pity and satisfaction. The same people who once bowed to him now waited to see him fall. Amir finally stood up. I didn't steal anyone's land, he whispered, voice broken. I just took what should have been mine. Rahima's heart broke hearing that. No, Amir, nothing stolen ever becomes yours. You didn't take land, you buried yourself in it. The police entered moments later. They found him standing still, eyes hollow. No shouting, no running. He simply raised his hands, surrendering to the truth. As they led him away, a neighbor muttered, that land was cursed. It's taking back everything it gave. But that wasn't the curse. The real curse was the silence that followed him, the silence of a mother who lost her son to greed and a village that lost its peace to lies. Months later, the mansion was sealed. No one dared to go near it. The government had reclaimed the land and promised to restore it to the rightful owners, poor farmers who had lived there long before Amir's fake papers. Yet every night, people claimed they saw lights flickering inside the mansion. Some said it was the ghost of his ambition that couldn't die. Others said it was Rahima sneaking in to pray for her son under the same roof that destroyed them. Rahima now lived in a small rented room by the edge of the market. She had sold her jewelry to pay legal fees. Every morning, she walked to the jail with a container of rice and lentils. She never missed a day. Inside the jail, Amir had changed. His arrogance was gone. The walls around him were bare except for one torn newspaper clipping that someone had given him, an article titled "The Mansion Built on Lies." He looked at it every night as if trying to understand how he had become the villain of his own story. One afternoon, an old man from the village came to visit. It was Noradin, the same farmer whose land had been stolen. Amir was shocked to see him. "You came here after everything I did." Noradin's voice was calm. "I didn't come to curse you, boy, I came to forgive you." Tears welled up in Amir's eyes. "I ruined your life, why would you forgive me?" "Because greed is a disease," Noradin said softly. "And diseases spread when no one stops them. You were infected by the city, by pride, but at least now you've stopped it from spreading further." He placed his wrinkled hand on Amir's shoulder. "You'll come out one day. When you do, build something honest, even if it's small, because the smallest truth is stronger than the biggest lie." Those words stayed with Amir like a seed planted in dry soil. 2 years passed. Amir was finally released on parole for good behavior. He came out quietly, no crowd waiting, no mansion behind him, just the open sky and the dust of reality. The first thing he did was visit the land. The mansion was gone. It had been demolished, every brick cleared. In its place was a small park built by the community, a space for children, families, and farmers. A wooden board stood at the entrance. It read, "Land of Truth, built from forgiveness." Amir walked slowly through the park, his eyes stinging with tears. The same soil that had once been a battlefield of greed now held the laughter of children. He saw Noradin sitting on a bench, smiling faintly. The old man was weaker now, but his eyes still carried that same calm light. "You came back," Noradin said. "I had to," Amir replied quietly. "I wanted to see what grew after I destroyed everything." Noradin chuckled. "Sometimes destruction is just another kind of planting." They sat in silence, watching the sun set over the green field. Amir finally spoke. "I used to think I needed that mansion to be respected, but now I understand I only needed peace." Noradin nodded. "And peace doesn't need walls, my son, it needs honesty." At that moment, Amir looked down and saw a small boy running toward them holding a flower. He handed it to Amir with a grin. "Uncle, this flower grew right where your big house used to be." Amir took it in his trembling hands. A single tear rolled down his cheek. "It's more beautiful than any marble I ever bought." That night, Amir returned home, not to the mansion but to the small room where his mother lived. Rahima was waiting by the door. When she saw him, she broke into tears and ran to hold him. "You came back to me," she whispered. "I prayed every day that you would return, not rich but real." He hugged her tightly. "I lost everything, Ma, but maybe that's how I found myself." They sat together eating the simplest meal, rice, salt, and love. No servants, no guests, just a mother and her son, finally at peace. But fate wasn't done with Amir yet. One morning, he received a letter from the municipal office. Inside was an official notice. The land that had once been stolen was now legally available for community development, and the village council wanted Amir to lead the rebuilding project as a gesture of reconciliation. Amir stared at the letter in disbelief. They want me to build again." Rahima smiled gently. "Maybe this time not a mansion, maybe something that belongs to everyone." He nodded, heart pounding. "A school," he whispered. "I'll build a school on the same land I once stole, but this time for truth." Months later, the work began. Amir worked day and night, shoulder to shoulder with the villagers he had once deceived. The school walls went up slowly, but each brick was placed with purpose, no lies, no shortcuts. When the building was finally complete, a ceremony was held. Children lined up, holding small flags. The mayor gave a speech saying, "This school stands not just for education but for redemption." Amir stood beside Noradin and his mother, tears glistening in his eyes. He stepped forward to speak. "I built my first mansion on greed and it collapsed. Today I build this school on truth and it will stand long after I'm gone. Because this land doesn't belong to me, it belongs to every child who will grow here." The crowd clapped, some even cried. For the first time in years, Amir didn't feel the need to prove anything. The applause didn't fill his ego, it healed his soul. Rahima looked at him proudly. "Now you've built something real, my son." That night, long after everyone left, Amir stayed alone in the school courtyard. The moonlight touched the walls softly, almost like a blessing. He whispered to himself, "I stole the land once, but today it forgave me." A cool wind blew through the trees, and for a moment, He could almost hear the laughter of children blending with the faint echo of the past, the sound of the mansion collapsing and the world rebuilding itself again. Amir closed his eyes. Greed built walls, truth built roots. He sat there till dawn, watching the sunrise bathe the school in gold. The same sun that once glared over his mansion now shone gently over his redemption. Years later, people no longer remembered the landlady's son who faked papers. They remembered the man who built the school of truth. Children studied there learned about honesty, integrity, and forgiveness, lessons born from his mistakes. A small plaque near the gate bore his own words. "This land was once stolen in lies, now it gives back in light, Amir Rahman." And every time someone read those words, they paused because they realized that sometimes the greatest stories aren't about rising high, but about falling, learning, and standing again with humility. In the end, the land forgave him. The people forgave him. And most importantly, he forgave himself. Amir never built another mansion, but he built something far stronger, a legacy that stood on truth, compassion, and the memory of a mistake turned into meaning. His story spread across the town like a whisper of hope, and whenever a young man passed by that school dreaming of shortcuts to success, the elders would say, "Remember the landlady's son. He built a palace of lies and lost it all, only to find a home in truth." And somewhere beyond the walls of the school, a gentle wind carried Amir's quiet smile, the smile of a man who finally understood what it meant to own something that could never be taken away.